This is the easiest way to become a cocktail pro, even if you're a total beginner. For the last 3 weeks, I've made cocktails for myself and my friends with this cocktail maker, and the experience was not at all what I was expecting. Can you really make professional cocktails at home without the hassle of all of this? I'll compare how fast it is, the difficulty level, the flavor, the cleanup time, and of course, the price difference of creating cocktails with and without the machine, so you know if it's actually worth it. I'll start with the simplest recipe and move to a much more complicated one. The whiskey sour only has 3 ingredients, but if you get the quantities wrong, it can be way too sour or way too sweet. Let's make the whiskey sour by hand first, starting with about 2 ounces of bourbon. We'll go in with a shot glass here, which should be about 1.5 ounces. Plus a little bit more to top that off. About 3/4 an ounce of lemon juice. So I'm gonna fill this hopefully about halfway, since I have no better way of measuring 3/4 of an ounce. And again, 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup. I'm gonna fill to roughly the same spot as that lemon juice, so at least I have the same quantities. Tossing in a couple of ice cubes and quickly stirring this up because I don't have a cocktail shaker, so this is the best I can do. And before we actually taste that, I'm gonna now use the cocktail maker to make the same exact drink. Let's check out the steps for this. So the first time you use it, you click on first use right here, and it's gonna make sure you have enough water in the back before you get started. So you just have to fill this up with water. And then you place a little glass under here and click the W on the top here, which is just gonna make sure everything is flowing properly. Dispenses a little bit of water. And then it says insert your capsule. So I'm gonna take the whiskey sour pod, open this up and put this with the capsule facing outwards, and then just shut the lid. And then it tells you to place the type of glass under it with ice under the dispenser. So I will go ahead and do that. Click next on the machine up here, and then you choose your spirit strength. I'm just gonna do regular on this one, but you can go heavier, lighter, or make it into a mocktail, which we'll get to later. And then you simply click mix. You can see it dispensing the whiskey right away. It's mixing in with all the liquid that's coming from the pod, and it's just making the cocktail right there for you. And then after about 10-15 seconds, it says cheers, open the lid and remove the capsule. So you just open up, pull out the capsule, which honestly, I found that they get a little bit stuck, a little bit tricky to pull out sometimes. And then these are fully recyclable as well. And then you have your cocktail here, the whiskey sour. They look absolutely identical to me. I'd say this one's like a slight tint more orange. I don't even know if that'll come through on camera with how similar it is. This is the one from the cocktail maker. So starting off with our time comparison, this one probably took me about 3 minutes to make with 3 different ingredients, opening them up, pouring them out, measuring them, all that sort of thing. This one, after getting over the first time use of the machine, took me maybe 30 seconds. In terms of difficulty, I'd say neither of them were really that difficult. I mean, you do have to look up a recipe for whiskey sour for this one if you don't know it. In this one, you just have to fill this jar right here with whiskey, which I had already done. And that's the only step besides actually putting the pot in there and starting the machine. So obviously a little bit easier with the machine, but not too different there. But now let's go in for a flavor test. I will preface this with whiskey is not my drink of choice, but I'm still gonna see which one I like better. The one I handmade. It's pretty sour. The whiskey is actually pretty subtle in this. Honestly, it's not bad. It's just more sour than I was expecting. But now the cocktail maker. It's a much more balanced drink. It's honestly not even close. This feels like I messed up the ratios, which I tried my best on. This one feels perfectly blended like an actual cocktail. It's significantly better. Now moving over to our more complex recipe, the Long Island iced tea. This one has 9 ingredients in the drink, and as a beginner, it's basically impossible for me to remember the quantities of everything and honestly the drinks that I have to get to make this recipe without directly staring at a recipe the whole time. The Long Island iced tea starts with 3/4 of an ounce of vodka. Again, we're fully estimating here, but they're all 3/4 ounces, so I'm gonna try and line them all up to about the same spot. 3/4 of an ounce of white rum, roughly the same spot in my shot glass. 3/4 of an ounce of silver tequila, in it goes. 3/4 of an ounce of gin, which I've already got in one of the bottles. 3/4 of an ounce of triple sec, and it goes. 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup, should help sweeten it nicely. 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice. And then last up, a bit of Coca-Cola to pour in and mix all together. Again, let's stir this one up. Here is our Long Island iced tea that we handmade, but now over to the mixer. Except it's not a mixer, it's a cocktail maker, but let's go over to the cocktail maker. Here is the Long Island iced tea pod. The back of it, you can see it's just like a bunch of juice in there, and it actually says on this one to load vodka, tequila, and rum, which I believe it's gonna tell us to do in just a second. Let's get the pod in the machine, just the same way as the last one in there. In it goes. And this time it says we need a highball glass, so I think it's gonna make a lot more than the last one. So let's get that under there with some ice. And then once again, it's as simple as next. Has rum been installed? The answer is no, so let's go ahead and install that. Now, one thing you'll know on the machine is that there's only 4 bottles, so the gin and rum one is actually shared. I need to take out my gin, which is basically what it's telling me to do, and fill the bottle with rum so that I can put that into the container. So that's as easy as pouring all of your rum into here. And I think it's gonna hold the entire 5th of rum. There it goes, perfect. And then you just put on this double lid, so the first part, and then this twists on to the top up here, and into the machine where the gin was before. Just like that. So now the answer to this is yes. Let's click next. And then it doesn't actually prompt me to make sure all the alcohols are there. So you do have to read the pod and make sure you fill them. I'm currently missing the tequila and vodka bottles right now, so I'm gonna get these filled up and back into there also. Let's go ahead and choose regular strength again and click mix. And again, 20 seconds later, our drink's done. We just lift the handle, pull out the pod, kind of like a coffee machine. And you can see this one's like a little bit stuck in there. You kind of have to pull a bit. Our recyclable pod again. And here is our 2 drinks. There's actually a pretty significant color difference in this one. This one's a much more darker orange compared to this pale color from the cocktail maker. In terms of how much time it took, I'd say it took me about 10 minutes to hand make this drink between the 7 ingredients, measuring them all out properly, stirring it, getting all that kind of done. The cocktail maker took me about 2 minutes between pouring in the alcohols, putting the pod in, and getting it started. So in terms of difficulty, this one, again, obviously is just going to be the winner. I would never be able to remember all the ingredients to make this myself. Now, obviously, if you're a bartender, that might be different, but most importantly, the taste test, the one I made first. It's honestly pretty horrible. The alcohol comes through really strong. It doesn't taste like a Long Island to me at all. It tastes like a mix of a bunch of alcohols together. That's really not flowing for me, but let's try the cocktail maker one. I'm gonna be honest, I've had better Long Island iced teas, but once again, the comparison's not even close. The one I made is pretty miserably bad. This one is pretty good, not the best thing I've ever had, but definitely a decent drink. But what if you or your friends don't drink alcohol? Well, as I hinted earlier, you can also make mocktails with this cocktail maker right here. I'm a little bit worried that the mocktails might taste pretty artificial from this machine, since there's of course no alcohol to mask the flavor, so let's give it a shot. For this one, I'm gonna use the Cosmopolitan cocktail pod, so let's get that in the machine. It says load vodka, but obviously we're making a mocktail, so we don't need that. Get this closed up, and once again, the machine is going to just read that barcode on there. I've got my glass under, the shaker with ice. I just put a large glass. Let's hit next, and we're gonna go to mocktail this time. Click on that and click mix. And here is our Cosmopolitan mocktail. It is a small amount in the glass, which is pretty interesting. I guess a lowball glass would have been better. It did say to shake and strain this one. I'm gonna mix it up a little bit. I don't really see anything in here that needs to be strained. Maybe it depends on which mocktail you're making, but I'll do a quick mix. And time for the most important part, the flavor test. Honestly, that's pretty good. It tastes like cranberry juice to me, which I think cranberry juice is probably in a Cosmopolitan because that's the main flavor that's coming through, but I would definitely drink this. It's pretty good. So is the cocktail maker actually worth it? In terms of time and difficulty, it's way faster for me for using the cocktail maker versus hand making the drinks. And the flavor, at least for me as a beginner, was completely uncomparable. It had way better flavor compared to the others. I will say that each of these cocktail pods does cost roughly $2. However, it cost about $50 to $70 to get all the alcohol I needed to make all the other drinks. Now, of course, I could have made a dozen drinks with it, so it's hard to compare the price. And then last up, cleanup. All you have to do is throw away the pods with this and you're all set. With the bottles, as they empty, you have to recycle them. As you spill from measuring out drinks, you have to get rid of that. So cleanup is somewhat comparable, maybe a little bit easier for the cocktail maker. Overall, I think if you're a beginner like me, this cocktail maker is huge. My friends absolutely love it. It's been an awesome thing to have in our home. If you're you're a fan of anything but water, I also reviewed the Ninja Thirsty, which uses these pods right here to make delicious sparkling drinks, so go check that out.